Hey, everybody, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
We've got an episode that we have been really excited to record for you. And just because this is a conversation we've been having with you and hearing from you, and we're having it with each other. And we have on the show today a just kind of preeminent perimenopause and menopausal specialist, a doctor out of the UK. We've got Dr. Louise Newson. And a ton of you probably already follow her. I've been following her for ages. I've learned so much from her. She's brilliant and just right on the front edge of what feels like to us a major shift in a conversation. I don't think 10 years ago I heard the word menopause anywhere. Nobody was talking about this anywhere.
Not really.
No, it's everywhere.
Yep.
And now I understand that this is my feed and it's curated for me, but even then, high level, highly visible women and doctors are hosting this right now. So things are changing.
They are.
So before we bring her on, because you're 50, I always forget, are you 53 or 54?
What year is it?
Today it is 2025.
54.
You're 54 and I'm 50. So we're in it. What's your, just so they'll know our baseline, where are you in the perimenopausal arc, and what's your deal with it right now? What's your primary experience with it right now?
I really think I've been perimenopausal since I had my last kid. So that would have been at 38.
That's early, which is not, that happens.
It does. And I have a lot of other diagnoses from the past 20 years, fibromyalgia, IBS, like anxiety. And I think a lot of those, the Venn diagram and the crossover for perimenopause and menopause is so huge that although sometimes it's comforting to have a diagnosis, if the treatment is hormones, but no one's saying that, then you just keep suffering.
It makes me very curious for you.
Yeah.
Like, if those diagnoses would have been like more accurately have an uplink to perimenopause.
But what is getting worse consistently is brain fog, memory, fatigue, post-exertion malaise. My capacity to rebound from anything physical is
low.
Really low.
But you're still in perimenopause, right? Like you still have the weird or occasional period.
Right now, I think every 6 months or so.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're not through it. Mm-mm. Neither am I. I feel like I started having symptoms 3 years ago when my period got weird. And I've always I'm regular, I'm right as rain, I'm 28 days. So I mentioned this to Dr. Newson, but I had just a combination of factors that were so hard to sort out. The brain fog and the lack of capacity. The shrinking capacity was my worst and most confusing symptom because I didn't know. I thought maybe I was depressed. Like, maybe I'm just depressed. Maybe I'm just divorced, And then my period got weird and spotty and I thought I was pregnant. So this is so dumb. But I'm still in peri because I think last fall I went 5 months with nothing. And then I had a little tiny bit of a period for 6 solid weeks that ended last week.
Oh my God.
So just what in the world?
I don't know. It's honestly confusing. I kind of forget about it because it's so long and then it comes back and I'm like,
same.
You again? How am I supposed to handle this?
It's so true. And like the general rule is once you have gone 12 months without a period, that's it. You're menopausal. You're done. You're through it. I remember Jenny, one of our friends, she hit like the 11-month mark twice.
Yeah.
And so she was like, I was almost there. So I was like 2 years, like just almost there. So I think I've only gone 5 months, but we're obviously en route. We are en route and the symptoms are all over the place. But I have only really recently started having real heat waves. That started for me about 2 months ago. Don't love them.
No, I
do not love them.
I regularly fog up my own glasses.
Oh, yeah. Have you seen that
Yes,
reel?
I sure have.
Where the steam is coming off her head like a football game. I was like that. I really only have my heat. Well, I have night sweat. Mine's at night. I don't have them during the day. But I mean, my house is an icebox, as you know. As is this is an icebox, and it will be so cold, and all of a sudden I will have thrown off every ounce of cover. I cannot get cool enough. I'm probably a frozen human. I'm just laying there going, I'll never cool down. And then all of a sudden I'm freezing because I sweat, and then it's cold.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun.
I don't find that being in a cold location helps the situation at all.
It doesn't. Because it's an internal heater.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't help. So it only like cools off your sweat a little quicker once it has come out all of your pores.
But I am not ashamed about it at all. Like whoever I'm around, I just grab something and make a fan and take my glasses off.
I mean, what else are we supposed to do?
And clean my glasses and say, sorry, hot flash.
Well, whatever. I mean, at this point, we're all this age, so we're like, got it, sister. You know?
Right.
I mean,
And the men and the boys just need to be exposed.
well, they do. And you talked about this to Dr. Newson a little bit, but our symptoms, because I really appreciated how clearly she said something. We asked her a question, and she was like, the majority of the misdiagnosed perimenopausal symptoms, hormone related, because our hormones are dropping, are in the brain. The fog, the overwhelm, the emotional response in an outsized way, the irritability, the fatigue. She's like, it's brain related.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and that means it is marriage related and parenting related, because we were walking around in these brains. And so this matters. This is a great conversation. It doesn't just matter. And she hammers this point, and I am like, sister, received. This is not just how to manage these symptoms for a 5-year period or however long we're in perimenopause and menopause. These are replacing our hormones for our longevity. So this is whole life. This is osteoporosis prevention, dementia prevention, muscle loss prevention, heart disease prevention. Like, this is from now to the end. And so I feel like I heard that and went, care now, because now's the time. Now is the time that we do it. My grandma, at the end of her life, her osteoporosis, she could not sit up straight in her wheelchair. Just crippled. All of her bones just crumpled. And I remember her telling me when she was 92 years old, I think she lived to 94, she said when she was 92, she goes, if I'd have known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself. And I was like, Grandma.
I mean, our epidemics right now for women in their 70s and 80s is osteoporosis, broken hips, chronic pain, and dementia.
Yeah, that's right.
And it seems like maybe those are related.
Yeah, and heart disease. That was the other one that she said where most women are going to die from.
Yeah.
So this is a big, and it's an important conversation, and it's for right now, and it's for later. So this is a good one to share with your friends and your sisters and even your daughters, because, we were saying if this was something we'd have known earlier, we'd have been better prepared for perimenopause when it hit. So, well, we have a preeminent guest to walk us through it all, and I really, really mean that. We have Dr. Louise Newson today. So she is obviously a physician. She's a menopause specialist, and she's a member of the UK government's Menopause Task Force. Isn't that a nice thing that they're having over there in their country?
Look at them.
A Menopause Task Force. Dr. Newson is an award-winning educator. She is a podcaster. She's an author. Absolutely committed. Her whole life's work is increasing awareness and knowledge about hormones and about perimenopause and menopause. This is what she does. This is her niche in the world. She's been described as the medic who kickstarted the menopause revolution. So, I mean, good on her. She is the founder of the free, award-winning Balance Menopause Support app. So we'll be sure to put that in all the links that we round up for you. She hosts the Dr. Louise Newson podcast, which is the #1 ranked medical podcast in the UK. She's also a Sunday Times bestseller. She's written many, many books, including her most recent book, which is called The Definitive Guide to the Perimenopause and Menopause. She is making this accessible for us and understandable, and she's putting information in the hands of women so that they can take control of their own health care, advocate for their own best interests, and finally start sort of changing the narrative around menopause. So we're lucky to have her today. So without any further ado, we welcome to the For the Love podcast, Dr. Louise Newson. Okay, Dr. Newson, welcome to the For the Love podcast. We have really been looking forward to this conversation with you.
Great. Yes. I'm looking forward to being here. It's wonderful that you've invited me. Thank you.
It's kind of like you're our captive hostage for these next 45 minutes, and we're going to squeeze all the juice out of the lime because you're our person right now.
Yes.
I have followed you for ages.
Oh, nice.
And I've learned so much from you. I have a million things to say, and they're all competing. I need to just slow down. I was just telling you before we started recording that our listening community is largely like right in the pocket of your work. We are mostly perimenopausal and menopausal women. And so this is a conversation we've been having, hosting, searching out for the last 5 years or so. And so you're going to have a captive audience today over on our side of the street. That is for sure. I wonder if we could kind of let's just start with the basics. Thinking about people listening who are maybe on the front edge of this journey, or even they're looking ahead, because gosh, what I wouldn't have given for this information in my 30s and in my 20s. But so we hear the terms, of course, perimenopause and menopause. And so I wonder, just from the highest level, can you break down those terms for us? What is perimenopause? When more or less does it start? How long does it last? What's the difference with menopause? When have we crossed over? All that.
Do you know what? It's really confusing, and I wish I could give you a really straightforward answer, but I can't. So if you think of the word menopause, it's just menstrual cycle, pause, stop. But it's more than that. It's actually officially a year since a woman's last period, which is just ridiculous, actually. Because firstly, as a woman, I do not want to be defined about whether I have periods or not, or how long it's been since my last period. It's just rubbish. So, even that term has caused so much confusion. And then does it just last a day? Or does it last a minute, or does it last a second, or what is it? So, and then perimenopause, if you look at the word, peri is just a medical term for around the time of. So around the time of the menopause, something else happens. What's that? So if you then think, well, what is happening to our bodies? And what is happening is we have hormones, estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, that are made in our ovaries, but they're also made elsewhere in our bodies, including our brain. And those levels drop as we age, or if our ovaries don't work properly. And it just so happens those hormones also help us with our periods. So, evolutionally, we've been defined as whether we have periods or not. Are we menopausal or not? But actually, what is happening is these hormones, which are chemical messengers, which go into our bloodstream, affect every cell in our body, are reducing. And they reduce before our periods stop for many women in the perimenopause, and that can last a decade or so. So for many women of many different ages, hormone levels are fluctuating and reducing. And then when we're menopausal, after that time, we are always menopausal. So it's not a transition. It's not just a process we go through. It's not just a day or a week or a month in our lives. It's forever we have no hormones. And so for many years, it's just been menopause is a transition. It's a process. Women get some flushes, sweats, they're there, little woman, don't worry about it. Well, actually, as a clinician, I do worry about it because these hormones have really important roles in our bodies. They help our cells to function, our organs to function, especially our brain, our bones, our heart. So if we don't have those hormones, it will cause symptoms for many of us. But more importantly, without symptoms or regardless of symptoms, there are risks to our health of not having hormones. And it's a more important conversation now than it was 100 years ago because we live so much longer as women.
Oh, yeah.
And what causes most of us as women to die is heart disease and dementia. Like what affects 1 in 2 postmenopausal women? Osteoporosis. So we need to be thinking in a really like grown-up way, like, hang on, what is going on? It's not just a natural process. It's something that's happening where we don't have biologically active hormones in our body, which is putting our future health at risk. And that's why it's so important to understand what's going on and then allow women to choose what they want to do about replacing those missing hormones.
One of the biggest misconceptions about menopause is that it's just about reproductive health. But as you mentioned, these hormones are neurotransmitters. They affect every cell, every organ. They put us at risk for heart disease and osteoporosis and dementia. So given all of this, if we know it, like a certain percentage of gynecologists understand this, certainly our demographic understands this, why is it still overlooked in medical education? And what needs to happen so that healthcare providers look at it as a full body condition, not just reproductive?
Yeah, it's so frustrating, isn't it? I spend most of my life frustrated, and I really feel the medical establishment, because it is quite an establishment, are failing women, not just in the UK, not just in the US, but globally as well, actually. And I think what happens is I'm quite interested in the history of medicine because it always tells a story, doesn't it? And so when hormones were first discovered, the researchers, the biochemists, the scientists, decided to work very closely with gynecologists because a lot of the research was done on the lining of the womb because they thought that it was the womb that controlled our emotions and our fertility and everything else. And obviously, indirectly, they controlled our emotions because of the ovaries producing the hormones. But because they worked very closely with gynecologists and paid them often to be doing research with them and have their names on papers, traditionally, menopause has been owned by gynecologists. And I sort of think, like, if I had type 1 diabetes and my pancreas wasn't working very well, I wouldn't go and see a surgeon who operates on pancreas, you know? And so this is a problem that over the last 25 years, people have been scared away from hormones for the wrong reason. So it's been a bit of a hot potato, like, oh, menopause, oh gosh, no, don't treat that, oh no, don't worry about that. It's not our problem, it's not our problem. And so now when I train like different doctors and train psychiatrists and cardiologists and rheumatologists, they're going, oh no, I would never prescribe HRT. Well, why not? You're prescribing antidepressants, you're prescribing methotrexate, you're prescribing steroids, you're prescribing blood pressure lowering drugs, which are far more risky than some natural hormones. But there's also the last sort of 25 years or so, medicine's become very siloed. You know, I've got a lot of general sort of hospital training. I've done lots in different specialties. I've worked as a family physician for 25 years. Whereas a lot of people, it's just like, oh, this woman's got palpitations. Let's sort out her palpitations. This woman has a mental health issue. Let's sort this out. And then no disrespect to OBGYNs, but a lot of them are trained in the ovary and the pelvic organs. A lot of them don't realize there's a connection between the ovary and the brain, or that, like you say, crazy. The brain produces these hormones. So when I talk to gynecologists over here and say, well, I'm worried about osteoporosis risk, they're like, well, we don't treat osteoporosis, you know, or like, well, I worry about the risk of suicide in women who have low hormones. And they say, oh no, mental health issue is not related to menopause. Well, no, because if I was a woman with mental health issues, I wouldn't go and see my gynecologist.
Right.
You know, so they're seeing a skewed population. And that's what's happening all the time. And then people don't like change, especially doctors. We're so quite set in our ways. We're trained in a certain way. We learn from our seniors. It's all very respectful. And I guess I've got an inquisitive mind. I've also got a science and pathology degree. I've always worked sort of part-time doing lots of different jobs. So I have a lot of blue sky thinking time, which a lot of doctors don't because they're day in, day out seeing patients. They're on this hamster wheel. And you just do what you're taught. So if I've been taught hormones are dangerous, if I've been taught menopause is just a few flashes, if I'm taught that menopause is about periods, that's all I'll do. And that's what I remember. So that's where it's difficult. And what's going wrong or right, I think, in this conversations is that women are understanding quicker than their healthcare professionals.
Yes.
But
That's exactly how it feels over here.
Yeah, and I feel sometimes really guilty. Like, I sometimes say to my children, gosh, if I'd never been active on social media, if I've never done my podcast, if I've never done any of this stuff with Medium, maybe it'd be better because women wouldn't know. It's like dangling sweets in front of children and saying, look at this, but you can't have it. This is just for decoration. But then I feel like, actually, no, because the more we think about it, and I say we as in menopausal women, the more we think about it, the more like my children are not going to have the same struggles that I had to get hormones.
That's right.
So I sort of feel like I've got in it too deep now. I sometimes want to hide in the dark room, but I feel like it's not fair on the women that are still struggling.
Let me ask you something really quickly, because you mentioned you kind of came out of more of a general practice. So you had like sort of a traditional space, and my guess is too kind of a traditional education around it. So, and let me say this first before I ask my question. Thank goodness you're doing this.
No.
Thank goodness for your socials. Thank goodness for your podcast. It matters right now. Amy and I were just saying before you came on, this is absolutely a centered conversation in the United States right now. It's everywhere. Yeah. We're thrilled about it. We're absolutely thrilled about it. So your work is only for the greatest good, for sure. What was it though that began drawing you toward this niche? I mean, it's a niche in the bigger realm of the body. When you had kind of come from over here. Was it your own experience?
Well,
was it what women were telling you?
To be honest, so what happened is. Because I sort of went part-time, because I worked as a medical writer, I reviewed lots of guidelines, lots of evidence. I've written books on evidence-based medicine, on all aspects of medicine, blood pressure and diabetes, so forth. And then the NICE menopause guidance came out in 2015, and I was asked to review them. So I reviewed them, went back to the WHI, the Women's Health Initiative study, went to lots of other papers, read them all again, and I read them before, and was like, yeah, no big deal. Like, this study is rubbish. It's the wrong type of hormones, wrong type of women. I'll write a paragraph about that, and just sort of thought. And then the more I read it, the more I thought, actually, why are these guidelines so conservative? Why are they so worried? Why are they sort of? And then I thought, actually, even those guidelines still say the majority of women would benefit. And back then, only 10% of menopausal women were taking hormones. And I just thought, actually, I review guidelines all the time, but nothing where it doesn't join the dots. Like, why are women unable to receive treatment? And then I was 45 at the time, and some of my friends were clearly struggling with symptoms. And they were saying, oh, don't worry, Louise, we've been to our doctor, we've got some great treatment. I was like, what's it called? Oh, it's venlafaxine, it's citalopram. I'm like, what? You're not depressed. Why are you being given antidepressants? They go, oh, well, they said HRT is too dangerous. I'm like, what? This is awful. So I started a clinic just to help some of my friends come off their off antidepressants and think about hormones. But then I started to see lots of women from all over the country, and I'd go home and have supper with my children and say, oh my goodness, I've just seen this lady who's given up her job. She said, that she felt like she's been hit like a bus. She's, got these awful thoughts. What's going on? So my daughter said, just put things on social media. Just start the conversation. People will learn. And then my symptoms started, but I thought, I'm just too busy. I'm trying to have a job. I've got 3 children and usual stuff. And then it was after about 8 months of being very close to leaving my husband and stopping working as a doctor.
Sure.
My middle daughter said, Mummy, I just think you need a period and then your mood might improve. And I just went, oh my God, Sophie.
Yeah.
Like that. And I was even like having night sweats. I was getting out of the bed most nights, creeping into the airing cupboard and getting a towel to lie on, because I thought, oh God, my husband's annoying me so much. Now he's snoring. Like, I don't want to wake him up and change the sheets. But I can't, I feel like I've wet myself. I'm just covered in this, and I'm not a sweaty person. So I just would get a towel out, put it on the bed, and then just try and sleep, and then catastrophize and worry and think, my joint pains, my headaches, my palpitations. But I just thought, I'm just not coping as a mother. I'm not coping as a.
Isn't that crazy?
It's just madness.
And you even knew.
Yeah, I know.
You even knew.
I know. But then to get back to your original question, that is why I think I worked so hard, because I've been taking hormones now for 9 years, but the dose of estrogen I need, because I don't absorb it very well through my skin, the testosterone that I need for my brain to work, I cannot get from my NHS GP. And I am white, I'm middle class, I'm educated, I'm English speaking. I still, if I'm struggling, like, what does that mean for the majority of people globally?
Exactly.
They're not having a voice and they're struggling. And if I didn't have those hormones, my life would look very different. Not just my personal social life or my work life, but my future health would be different.
Yeah.
I worry about my risk of osteoporosis, which I've already said I have a 50% chance if I don't take hormones. So it's like, and I can't think of anything else in medicine where I'm just being told, no, Louise, you can't have it. So it's this injustice now that is like, just keeps me working almost.
Yeah. Your report titled Women's Experiences of Perimenopause and Menopause revealed that older generations rarely talked about menopause.
Mine didn't. My mom didn't.
More women obviously are discussing it. Like we talk about it all the time. We're discussing it with our daughters and sons. In your home growing up, was menopause ever talked about?
You see, I'm very lucky. Well, luck is a weird word, isn't it? But my, this is where I'm not lucky really. My father died when I was 9 in 1979. And my mother went to work. We didn't have any money. And she went to work as a teacher. And she started to really struggle. She was getting some sweats, but she also couldn't remember things. So she went to a doctor. So this was probably 1980. And said to her doctor, look, I've got these symptoms. And he said, oh, Mrs. Newson, you'll be going through the change. Take these tablets. Now, back then, no one asked. No one challenged the doctor. No one asked anything. There was no internet, no Dr. Google. So she just took these tablets because she was desperate to keep working. She had 3 young children to look after. And she started to feel better. So she carried on taking them. And she didn't really know what they were, but obviously they were HRT. And so over the years, the only conversations in our household have been when she's seen doctors who said, no, you need to come off them now. You're too old. You shouldn't be on them. And, the more work I've done, the more she's known that she doesn't need to stop. I mean, she did start when in 1980, it was the pregnant horse's urine, estrogen, and the synthetic progesterone. So she's transformed and transferred onto the natural hormones. But so I've been very, very fortunate. But I've seen her friends around her who haven't been on hormones, and sadly, a few of them have cognitive decline, dementia. Some of them have osteoporosis. I can see their health sort of worsening, whereas she's, mentally very strong. And my mother-in-law actually is just turned 89, and she had a hysterectomy when she was 38 and had her ovaries removed. So therefore, she went into menopause at age 38. And she didn't know what was going on. She's normally a very positive person, and she felt very joyless, very sad. She said she felt a black cloud over her the whole time. And then she read a book about hormones and said to her husband, who was a GP, Alec, I need some estrogen. And he just went, what? I don't really understand. Anyway, managed to get her seen by a gynecologist in Birmingham who gave her an implant. And she just, the cloud lifted. So she's been very fortunate. She's very healthy. But the sad part of her story is that her sister's 18 months younger than her, who also had a hysterectomy about a year later, but had quite an abusive relationship with a man, and very sadly took her own life and died. Wow. But now, my mother-in-law keeps thinking, I wonder if it was a hysterectomy rather than the partner, and no one knew. So, it's weird because so many women say, oh no, my mother had no symptoms, my friend has no symptoms, but they think the symptoms are just flushes and sweats. They don't realize the bigger effect, especially on our brains. And it's this misinformation that's gone on for so long that is judging people. And then a lot of people and cultures and races think, oh, it's a white woman's medicine, or it's a failure if we take this medicine. We're giving in to Western medicine, and that's completely wrong.
I'd like to talk more about the fuller range of symptoms. I'm 50, and probably 3 years ago, I could not sort myself out. I could not. I'm high capacity and always have been. And all of a sudden I just couldn't attend to my work, for the duration that it required. I felt overwhelmed. I felt like my capacity shrunk socially, just across the board. I'm like, what is wrong with me? And I attributed it to a kind of a recent divorce. And I thought, I'm just sad. And then of course my period started going off the rails. And I am a person who has high level conversations all the time. And I type into my computer, am I pregnant? Because my period's being weird. And of course the internet told me, ma'am, you are in perimenopause. Like everything you're saying is perimenopausal. And I was stunned it never occurred to me that brain fog, that this sense of overwhelm and a shrinking capacity had anything to do with anything other than just my life or circumstances. And so I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about this. And of course, nobody probably has every symptom, but it is broad what perimenopause can wreak havoc on a body.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that report, I write about the questionnaire that I sent, and it had nearly 6,000 responses. And the commonest symptoms are those affecting the brain. So the brain fog, the memory problems, the fatigue, the low mood, the irritability, the anxiety, the poor sleep, the fatigue. So you can see why women are being misdiagnosed as depression, because these are symptoms related to depression often as well. But when we understand how these hormones work in our brain, it's no surprise. But the problem is, as women, we're very used to being gaslit. We're very used to being told, oh, well, you're very stressed, and oh, well, you've had trauma before. Oh, well, you've now got 3 children, and isn't it difficult for you to work? How do you manage? I've never known anyone ask my husband, how do you manage with 3 children and a full-time job? It's just So why is it suddenly we can't cope? And that's what's happening a lot to a lot of women. But if you understand the role of hormones, but the other thing is we have other symptoms that often affect us in a physical way. So, palpitations or dry skin or nail changes or hair changes. And actually, as a physician, these are really important, because if someone has low mood, and they're also getting cystitis, they're also getting dry, itchy skin, then it's less likely to be clinical depression and more likely to be something that's affecting different organs in their body, i.e. more likely to be a hormonal problem. And that's really, really important, actually. So the more women can understand the myriad of symptoms, the more they can often join the dots as well.
So we've talked about the medical profession taking a long time to get up to speed. And women are educating themselves on all of this much faster than our doctors are, oftentimes. So what advice would you give a woman who suspects that her myriad of symptoms or even diagnoses are hormone related? What advice would you give her when she walks into her doctor's office? How can she advocate for herself and get what she needs?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And the word advocate is so crucially important in this conversation. Advocate for yourself, but maybe have someone else to advocate for you as well. Because for many of us, when our brain's all over the place, it's quite hard to be that strong woman to go, yes, this is what I want. You just sort of crumple a bit, or I know I would, because I was very tearful at many times. So having information, downloading the free Balance app, getting this health report. So we've created it so you can mark your symptoms, whether they're not there or mild, moderate, severe, and take that to your doctor as like the initial part of the consultation and say, look, I've got this health report. These are my symptoms. I would like to talk to you about my treatment choices. And I have decided I want X, Y, Z, or I would like to talk about treatment to improve my symptoms, but also my future health. And you'll know then quite quickly, firstly, if it's going to be a good consultation and if that doctor's knowledgeable. And the other thing really is to be clear that it's fine to ask for a second opinion. If a doctor looks at you really blankly and says, no, sorry, I'm not interested. Well, firstly, they need training. But secondly, just say, right, okay, who else can I talk to? Because I don't want to waste your valuable time or mine, but I really need help. And remembering that menopause lasts forever, i.e. until the day we die. It's not just something to get you through the next job interview or the next phase of your life or the next relationship. It is forever. And so making sure that choice that you decide is right for you, knowing you can change your mind, you can see someone else, but you have to be happy with what you've got. Because, I see women all the time that have been denied HRT for the wrong reason 10, 20 years ago. I saw someone in my clinic yesterday who said, oh, yeah, I sort of had my menopause at age 50, but I was busy and I didn't really, the doctor said not to worry. But she's 72 now. She has had a heart attack. She's got osteoporosis. Her mother has got dementia. And at the end of the consultation, she said, I wish I'd met you 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't want that regret in women. It's not fair.
I want to ask, I don't know if this is the right question. I may be having the words wrong, but so when we're looking at HRT, because we're just normal people trying to assess this barrage of information, and there's a lot of competing ideology around managing menopause, and everybody feels real strong about it. Like, however they feel is so concrete, and then sometimes it's in complete opposition to this idea over here. And so it can, for just a person who didn't go to med school, it can be a lot to wade through. And so when we talk about HRT, what is the difference? Like the terms I'm reading that I don't quite know how to parse out, what's the difference between like a synthetic hormone and a bioidentical? I don't really know what that means.
So it's a great question. So when we talk about hormones, firstly, there are hundreds of hormones in our body. Hormones are chemical messengers that are produced in different tissues, organs, go through our bloodstream to every cell. So we've got loads of hormones. So when we talk about HRT, hormone replacement therapy, or MHT, menopause hormone treatment, the hormone bit is only 3 hormones: estradiol, progesterone, testosterone. So even then it can be a bit confusing. So if we look at those 3 hormones, there are different types and different doses. Now, traditionally, they've been synthetic. So my mother was given pregnant horse's urine, estrogen, which you could argue is natural, but it doesn't contain all the hormones that we need as humans. It's got different hormones in it.
Yeah.
But also, when they discovered hormones in the 30s and 40s, they wanted to chemically modify them so they could sell them. Because if they had the same structure and formation, then people bought them over the counter, and they wanted to market them, they wanted to make them, they wanted to make lots of money from them. So they chemically altered the structure. So if you chemically alter the structure, it doesn't work the same way in the body. And recently I've been trying to work out how to explain it in a simple way to people. And I've been talking about the difference between natural strawberries, nice organic fresh strawberries, or strawberry flavored gummies or sweets. They're both strawberries. If my daughter comes home from school and says, Mummy, I've had some strawberries at school, obviously I really hope that she's had nice fresh strawberries. But she could have had some sweets. They taste nice for her, both of them. They will work very differently in the body. Everybody knows that. So with hormones, you've got the synthetic ones, the Haribo sweets, the sort of, the chemically altered ones, or it's like having roast chicken and chicken flavored crisps. They're completely different, aren't they? So they've been chemically altered. So the studies that show the risks with HRT have been the synthetic chemically altered ones. So we talk quite often about bioidentical or body identical hormones, and that basically means the structure is the same. They're often made from yam or yam plants or soy, but they are down the microscope, they're exactly the same as the hormones. So they fit the receptors well, they work in the cells in the right way. So they have these beneficial effects in the body. And that's really important, the difference. What's quite paradoxical, actually, I think, is that all contraception is synthetic hormones. Yet we prescribe it like Smarties out to people without any worry in the world. Yet you suddenly say HRT and everyone's going, oh no, I can't have that. That's going to kill me. That's going to give me breast cancer and heart attack and stroke. Well, hang on. Even the older types of synthetic hormones are a lot lower dose than contraception, which is given out 10 to the dozen. But the natural hormones don't have these risks. So why are we so worried about something that's really natural in our bodies?
So that's just key. When we are talking to our doctors and that's a piece of the puzzle that we have to come with that in hand, clear, like educated and prepared for sure.
I have a question about something you said at the top of the interview, talking about lifespan. Our lifespan is longer. That's why more of us are dealing with this. Hormones were discovered just, I think you said, in
30s.
in the 30s. And so it's taken a long time for the medical community to catch up to treat these things. But how much of it do you think could be lifestyle? Like in the US, every month, someone discovers that one of our top diseases is actually a lifestyle or a metabolic disease. So do we know much about how women dealt with perimenopause and menopause 200 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, did our bodies naturally just handle it better
Yeah.
in addition to having a shorter lifespan? How do we get here?
Yeah. So, okay, it's interesting. If you think evolutionary as women, we are designed to have children. Like that is how we're designed. So in the Victorian times, for example, we used to reproduce a lot more. Many women had a lot more pregnancies than now. And not all successful pregnancies, but we still were pregnant a lot more. So when we're pregnant, we have really high levels of hormones in our body and we don't ovulate. So we preserve our egg function a bit. So in the Victorian times, the average age of menopause was about 57. It's about 51 in the UK now. So it was older because probably their hormones lasted longer in their body. But the average age of death actually was 59. So they would die quite soon after. So they didn't have this like long consequences, if you like, of not having hormones in their bodies. Women did still suffer. You know, there were lots of women who went to asylums and were locked up and had lobotomies and all sorts of, awful treatments. But it wasn't recognised. In the Victorian times, there's some great books that I've read actually from gynecologists writing about this crisis time, about they knew something was related to ovaries, but they didn't know about hormones then. And so very descriptive texts and all the different diagnoses that they would give to women that would affect them in different ways, but they didn't know that it was menopause. So they had different labels, if you like, for women. But the other thing is that, menopause is associated with these low hormones which determine inflammation. If we've got a lot of inflammation in our body, it increases our risk of diseases. The inflammatory diseases are the heart disease, osteoporosis, diabetes, dementia, autoimmune diseases, cancers. But there's lots of other reasons why we have more inflammation in our body than ever before. And a lot of it, you're absolutely right, is lifestyle. A lot of people are eating processed foods. They are inflammatory foods. They're not exercising. Exercising reduces inflammation. They're drinking alcohol. They're smoking or vaping. That increases inflammation. So it's a multifactorial disaster, if you like, for our immune system. Not having hormones will make that even worse. But having hormones back, like as a menopausal woman myself who takes hormones, I have to have responsibility for my health as well. So, I could eat, burgers and chips every day. I could smoke 20 a day. Hormones are good, but they're not going to help me as much as if I look after myself. And that's what's really important. But I think what's very sad in the conversation, and I think some of it is getting bigger in the US because people are realizing the marketing power of menopause. They're realizing, firstly, how hard it is to get listened to and treatment from a doctor. So if I was a marketeer, I would be rubbing my hands with glee and thinking, right, what can we sell these women? What can we market to these women?
Totally.
And what supplement, what shampoo, what face cream, whatever you can prescribe, give to these women because we'll make money out of them. And, if I hadn't got hormones, I was so desperate, I would have, given my kidney away to feel better. So I get why women are trying these things and I get why people always want to make money. There's a lot of corruption. And that's what's really difficult for women who are vulnerable anyway. It's like, who do we believe? And, for transparency, I do no paid work with pharmaceutical companies at all. So I have no hidden agenda. My agenda is just to improve women's choice and allow them to have healthier lives. But a lot of people, doctors, marketeers, business owners, they have some sort of agenda. And I think I could see it and hear it more and more. And I think that's such a shame. And then women are told, well, why don't you just improve your diet and then you'll feel better? Well, they might feel better, of course. We all feel better when we eat better, but we're not going to get those hormones back. I wouldn't say to someone who had an underactive thyroid gland who was really tired, oh, never mind, just maybe eat less of chocolate or do whatever. So, but in medicine, we have to be thinking holistically. It's not just one thing that we focus on. And I think because it's useful for people to debate, to talk about the alternatives to those awful HRT because of the marketing ploy, then it makes women feeling guilty for going and getting help because their mother didn't and their auntie didn't and whatever. So, but it's changing that shift. And I think it's also thinking about what are the risks of not having hormones? We're talking all about, what are the risks of having? What are the risks of not having? Well, for me as a menopausal woman, my risk is osteoporosis, and I want to reduce that risk. So, and then it's about choice. So everywhere you look, it's been set up to fail women, I think, who are hormonal.
Yeah. And there's another factor too, because in the UK where you're right out of the tip on menopause advocacy. And so here in the US, we've actually had several bills introduced to improve menopause education and care. And some of that includes coverage for hormone like therapy, replacement therapy, and in some cases like workplace protections too. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on the importance of having our policymakers, our insurers, our employers also as a key part of this conversation.
Everyone needs to be involved in the conversation, but everyone needs to be working together. And the together bit is really important because it should be to improve women's health. So workplace is an example where I think people could do some really good work, and there's some good work doing, but there's also some not so good work doing. And so when I think about workplace, it's great to have that conversation. It's great to have more knowledge. It's great for everybody, men, women, menopausal or non-menopausal people, to have information. But what we shouldn't be doing is just saying to women, oh dear, you're menopausal. Why don't you go in this rest room? Why don't you have access to some more water and a fan? That's not very helpful. In the same way that, if I had a broken leg, I wouldn't want someone just to give me a stool to rest my leg on if my bone was sticking out through my skin. I would like someone to take me to hospital and say, right, get it fixed. We might adjust your work a bit. We'll be really careful. We'll talk to you. If you need painkillers or a bit of reduced time till you feel better, fine. But don't just there, pander me. And that's what's happening sometimes in the menopause space, is that women are just being told, it's just a transition. Let's support you through the transition. Well, what does that mean? Do I not go for promotion? Do I work part-time? Do I work at home? That's just ridiculous. When actually, if I have treatment, I'll be better than ever. So it's sort of, and a lot of workplace initiatives are set up by people who aren't doctors. They don't, they've got their own agenda. This is the whole thing about people's agenda, and that's a shame, really. So I think a lot of policymakers, and with the insurance, it's madness, isn't it, that women are not covered by insurance because no one wants to insure half the population.
Sure.
But if I was a young man and had my testes removed and I had low testosterone, I would be covered by insurance usually. If I was a young woman and had my ovaries removed, I wouldn't be covered by insurance.
Right, it's crazy.
Whereas my risk, of heart disease, osteoporosis, is so much greater if I was young and menopausal. So if I was insuring that person, it's a lot cheaper to allow them to have hormones than to pay out for their hip fracture and their everything else as well. So I don't get it. There's so much I don't get, but maybe I'm just thinking in the wrong way, but it doesn't make sense, does it?
Insurance should be playing the long game here and ultimately managing women's health at this level and during this season it's a savings for them over the long, not even to mention all the misdiagnosis that she's about to encounter.
For sure. I totally agree, and I don't get it. Some of the insurance companies, when I've spoken to them, just say, well, because it affects half the population and it's a natural process, it's part of aging, whatever. But then, if you compare it to raised blood pressure, is that a disease or not? Well, it's not really a disease, but if we don't treat it, people have a higher risk of a heart attack. So therefore we treat it. Is menopause a disease or not? I would argue probably it is. But even if you say it's not, it increases risk of really significant diseases. And we know that if you treat it, it reduces that risk. So,
we have to be uplinking at least a giant portion of this monstrous gap in healthcare to just patriarchy, right? Just in that women at our age, when we're beyond childbearing years now, and so we are no longer useful. I mean, the whole medical complex was obsessed with me when I was in my 20s having babies. There were books everywhere and doctors everywhere and information everywhere. And I mean, I knew down to the day what was going on inside my body. But now that we're old and not useful to procreation anymore, don't you feel like that's a big piece of it? That
for sure.
Women have always had to claw our way for good healthcare and representation inside of the medical complex.
I totally agree. It's very convenient for society for women to be invisible as they age.
Certainly.
Who wants a forceful woman? Who wants to have somebody? There's so much misogyny, actually, and also in medicine as well. There's a lot of hierarchy. There's a lot of, well, Louise, you're just a family physician. What do you know? You're not a OBGYN, or you're not a this, you're not a that. And I think, and it's not just menopause, people who have endometriosis, people who have period problems, they're just ignored. They're just treated as second-rate citizens.
That's true.
And I think, the medical community, very sadly, are failing women, and it's wrong.
I know. This is why your work matters, and it is mattering, because a bunch of normals like us now have new information in our hands, a new understanding of what is going on in our bodies, and a new sense of authority when we walk in to talk to our doctors, where we don't feel criticized or minimized or sort of condescended to, and that to me makes all the difference in the world. Let's break it down. We're gonna wrap it up here. Sometimes I like to tell people like you across from us who are highly credentialed, very brilliant and we're just the regular people out here. Talk to us like we're in kindergarten. So if we were just going to go through it like this, just the down and dirty, here's the brass tacks. What would you say are the biggest misconceptions about menopause?
What it is, actually. The biggest misconception is that it's just some flushes that people will get through, which is completely wrong.
Great.
What's the most important thing women can do now to manage symptoms later on?
That's good.
So get in knowledge and information, download free Balance app, be empowered with information to work out how you're going to manage your symptoms.
What, more or less, should we be asking our doctors, but we're not right now? So whether it's we're embarrassed or we have lack of knowledge or we're ashamed or whatever, what should we be saying to our doctors?
I think too many women are scared of asking for hormones for the wrong reasons. So I think we should be saying, why am I not being received? So I say that again. Why am I not being given hormones? Why are you not having a conversation with me about hormones? And that's whether you're menopausal, perimenopausal, you've got PMS, PMDD. We need to be talking about hormones in general and how they're affecting us as women and having an impact on our future health.
That's so great. These young women are going to come up with this ready to go. They're going to be locked and loaded. They will not be Googling, am I pregnant when we're 50 years old and the internet having to go, come on, man, you're perimenopausal. I want to tell you something as we're about to close here. I was reading your book. We were kind of getting ready for this interview with you. We're doing like deep dives into your work and your body of knowledge. And I'm telling you, this morning, before this interview, I got on, I pulled together all my information. I pulled together my blood panel that I worked with kind of a holistic practitioner, and I made an appointment this morning and to go to my gynecologist. And I had this little box saying, what are your primary concerns? I filled the whole thing I'm like, here's everything I want to talk about. Here are some next steps I know I need to take. I will be bringing my panels with me. I mean, that was this morning, and I'm have it next week.
Great.
So I feel I'm so grateful to have doctors teaching us what to do, like you, and helping us feel empowered and educated enough to walk in and take control of our own healthcare. So
Perfect.
thank you for all that you do for women. And this ball is just going to roll downhill. We're catching the front edge of of this shift, but our daughters, your daughters, I just don't think they're going to have to fight in the ways that we do to be believed and listened to and heard. And so thanks for being a big part of the change.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
And what we learned from you, we take to a generation of doctors that are not going to go back to med school at this point. So I think they're probably learning so much from their patients.
That's probably true.
And eventually, when every patient that walks in the door says the same thing, then the doctors will behave differently also.
Yeah, that's right.
So
They're like, these women are driving me crazy coming in here with their panels, waving them all around.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Just for our listeners, can you tell them where's the best place to follow you, to find your work, to read your books, all of it?
So the easiest way is just my website, actually, which is drlouisenewson.co.uk, but it's drlouisenewson.co.uk, and then you can springboard onto anything you want. There's lots of free resources, including my YouTubes and, like you say, podcast, as well as Balance app as well. And I'm quite active on social media, especially Instagram.
Perfect. We'll round all that up for you listeners so you can have a one-click, one-stop shop. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for being with us. I feel just more confident even having talked to you for 45 minutes.
Perfect.
So,
Good.
Yeah, just love it.
Yes,
thank
thank
you. Okay. Well, my brain is buzzing.
yes.
I really do. I have an appointment next Friday.
I'm really impressed. This is a conversation for another episode about our healthcare and insurance, but I also, when digging into her book, said, I'm tired of this. I'm going to make an appointment again and can't get one till May.
Jeez.
It's just, it has to do with who takes your insurance, who takes new patients.
You're right. And OBGYNs are notoriously booked. A ton of them won't even take new patients.
Right. I had an appointment that I made last year, and in January they stopped taking my insurance. So they called and said, sorry.
Right, and it's too expensive just to pay out of pocket. That's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of obstacles to get it, even if you have all the knowledge. Even if you get the blood work from your GP, to go to someone who will prescribe hormones, it's still a lot of hoops you have to jump through.
What are you working through?
Oh my gosh, you mean symptoms?
Yeah, and even solutions and whatever.
Honestly, between her and all the other stuff we've been reading and talking about, I've had nausea and fatigue since I started my period in 7th grade.
Jeez.
Which now, if you connect the dots, I'm like, I think I've struggled with imbalanced hormones since middle school.
Well, to her point, and we read her book, there are so many hormones in our bodies.
Yes.
And they have been fluctuating since we started our periods. So, yeah, that makes sense.
So, but I was treated based on the time of life I was in. Well, not when I was a teenager, but then when I was having kids and had fluctuating hormones, I was just giving meds to conceive and more hormones to keep pregnancies. But then when I was done having kids, everybody just walked away and said, yeah, you don't need to be on anything. But there has been a through line of fatigue and nausea. And then I think I probably started perimenopause after I had my 4th kid.
Do you?
I've been going to doctors for 20 years now saying, something's wrong, please help me. And my blood work usually comes back within a normal range. And no one's ever sat down and looked at all of it.
Yeah.
And said, hey, maybe hormones is sort of the foundation of the issue.
I've never had a doctor tell me that.
And
I've had all kinds of problems. Like I have fibroids and I have like really like horrible cycles, and not one doctor has ever suggested that to me.
I finally, when I thought I was in menopause a few years ago, because I didn't have a period for probably 7 months, I went to my current OB, which it changes because my insurance changes. So I don't really have
this like steady,
but then I started hemorrhaging after that. So not menopause, but by then I had started having, it's called paresthesia. It's pins and needles, which is actually a common menopause symptom, but mine was so severe, I felt like I was getting electrocuted.
That sounds terrible.
It was so painful. It was like 3 to 6 times a day, and would bloom like a hot flash, but it was like electricity. The OB didn't want to touch me and sent me to a neurologist. And he said, it's either epilepsy or menopause, but it doesn't matter. We're just going to treat this symptom, and just loaded me up with gabapentin.
Jeez.
For years.
Right.
So,
this is the reason we're having this conversation.
So I keep going to, like she said, our medical system is siloed. So they do have a portal, and they can like look at my blood work, but nobody's having a conversation. And the worst part is we are trying to manage all of this, advocate for ourselves at a time when we're exhausted. We have the worst brain fog we've ever had. Our capacity is smaller. And then we still have lives. And so we get distracted, and then we realize, crap, it's been 3 months. I've got to make that call. I've got to find another doctor.
Totally.
I've got to try again.
I know. And it's expensive. Like I mentioned a functional doctor, I guess 2 years ago, back when I thought I was pregnant with an IUD.
Right.
And I'm 50. Like, it makes me laugh so hard every time I think about it. That's how dumb I am that's how little I know about perimenopause. You're right. It didn't occur to me. Anyway, I went to a functional doctor, and, we did 8 vials of blood, the full workup, inflammatory markers, every single level, all my deficiencies. It was the most thorough blood work I've ever had. And then she wrote up this whole report for me. Here is what it says. Here's the analysis of it. Here is where you're deficient. This is what you need. And then even more so, she said, you need to get rid of the IUD yesterday. And here I still am.
Yeah.
And she was like, yesterday. And you need to go on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And she wrote up for me a script to take into my gynecologist. Here it is. Here's your numbers. You hand it to him and say, this is what I know, this is what I need, and this is what I want to try. All so useful, which I'm taking next Friday. As I said, I've got my whole thing.
Yeah.
But that was all out of pocket.
Yeah.
And it was expensive. I mean, it was like $750 to get that blood work and to get that analysis and to get that sort of treatment plan. Like, we can't just pay for that,
Yeah.
So again, back to Dr. Newson's point, we have a lot of advantages, and even we are kind of wading through the murk trying to get to the bottom of it. Anyway, I love this conversation, and I love that we're having it on this show, particularly just around the huge greater midlife discussion that we are hosting. But we'd like to hear from you guys too, by the way. So again, like I told Dr. Newson, we are you. So our listeners are basically more or less in our demographic. So I know this is a huge conversation we're all having right now, or issue we're having, or about to be having, or whatever. So if you go over to jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab, we have a little button over there. It says leave a voicemail or send a voicemail or something like that. It's obvious. Tell us your deal. leave us a minute or two message. Tell us about your experience here with perimenopause or with menopause, with getting the right treatment, with misinformation or misdiagnosis, or what you've learned, or who you're whatever you want to tell us to contribute to this conversation. We'd love to hear from you. And that is a message we may end up playing on the show for sure. So that's jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe. Like wherever you listen to the show, just hit the follow button or the add button or the plus sign, and just like that, your app will build a little library of all the For the Love episodes for you, and you never have to miss any, and they just show up in your little phone. So anyway, good on us.
Okay.
We're taking the bull by the horns.
We are.
We're doing better, and then the next generation is going to do infinitely better, which is how this works. All right, you guys, thanks for being here with us for today's episode. I know you're going to love it. This is a good one to share. This is the conversation you're probably having with your friends and your sisters. So grab that link and share it. And we love when you do that. All right, everybody, have a great day. See you next week.